think human rights commissions need to take up suo motu. There are some very specific Goa-specific issues also, like for example, the whole media representation of Goa, particularly the representation of people in Goa as easygoing, sitting and just singing and you know, not really doing work, etc. Then the representation of women in Goa as being easy and available, either through advertisements for tourism or through through the film industry. And this is again is another concern about, because it has this impact of saying people don't do work here, so let us use their land, let us take their land, let us acquire their land, because after all they are good for nothing, like a banana people, you know, who don't do anything. Uh, then there are the issues which the kinds of issues that are prevalent in the rest of India. The human rights violations are very much prevalent in Goa also. Like Dadu Mandrekar said, there is untouchability in Goa. There are places in Goa where women have to stretch their hands and take water. And people, we, because in the interest of projecting this image of being a forward place, we like to hide these issues, so we don't acknowledge them. So there is a human rights violation in a denial of the existence of these problems. The state denies it for its statistics, and because it denies the existence of the problem, there are no measures to deal with it. So this is a very serious issue of denial of existence of problems for the sake of covering it up for tourism. You also have now the state has, after a long battle over special economic zones, the state has said we shall have no SEZs. But they have not withdrawn their policies. They have not withdrawn their SEZ policy as such. They have not withdrawn various other policies which say that we should have SEZ-like structures. For example, you can have, under the information technology or a biotechnology policy, you have provisions for formulation, for setting up food parks, for setting up where the laws of the land shall not prevail, because they shall be SEZ-like. So all this. So what about all these laws? You have all these laws, but those laws are not operational in those areas because they are going to be SEZ-like. So you can have an information technology right here within the vicinity of this premises itself, and these violations can happen full scale. These are some of the development related issues which, in the name of development, people are displaced. For example, as far as this information technology park, this IT park, here the people are displaced from access to firewood, which is from the access to a defecation space, from access to use of the land for cultivation, for an imaginary IT park, because really even the contracts that were awarded were not really for IT, they were for BPOs, etc. So it's a real question mark. What is this development about? For whose benefit and at whose cost? There is a plethora of laws, and there, because of this denial issue, I would like to focus on this, that there has to be an accountability of the surveys and statistics which the government is generating, because we need to know how those surveys are conducted. There was some time ago, now the government acknowledges child labor, but some time ago there was a survey which said there's one child labor found in Goa. Then at another time they said there is no HIV/AIDS, there is no child abuse, there is no there is no need, and then they do not set up the mechanisms, or if they have to set up mechanisms because the laws require it, they set it up, they do not publicize it, they do not provide it the infrastructure, so people do not go to those mechanisms with their cases, and then they say there is no need to this, we will close this up. So now with the Goa police bill proposed, they are saying we don't need a state police control authority because it is functioning well. So they somehow find ways to say that you don't need these mechanisms, either because they do not publicize them, or because they kind of create a situation where people cannot really go to these mechanisms. Another whole arena of violation is in the sphere of dealing with protests. it is ironical, but the way the word obstruction is used, because protests are seen as obstructing traffic, as obstructing the um, barge. I mean, sorry, the at Kariwada, the I mean, you know, the obstruction of the ships. But what about the obstruction to the very lives of people and their livelihoods, which these mine owners or in the way they are functioning, the Mormuga Port Trust in its whole bombardment of privatization. What about the obstruction to their very lives and livelihoods that these are creating? What has the state done about that obstruction? When and can they only act to say that the protesters are obstructing the traffic? That's a genuine democratic right to protest. So when they slam down some provisions under the IPC and the CRPC saying that obstructing somebody in the course of public duty or obstructing traffic. But how can they talk of slamming these provisions when they have not done nothing about the obstruction to the lives and livelihoods of people? So these are various areas and concerns that are emerging, which I would think the Goa State Human Rights Commission should take up suo moto, because they don't concern just one protest. They concern a series of protests over a series of issues. Similarly, issues like sex ratio, the representation of people in Goa, women in Goa, they don't concern one woman, one man only. That itself is a matter of concern, but it is that much more a matter of concern when it concerns an entire population. On this note, I would
Justice Verma would like to just express his thoughts now, and then after that we could have a little bit of question answer.
Director Ms. Sai and all the distinguished friends here. Yeah, was that's okay. Well, when I came here, I didn't know that I'll be here on a day which is of great significance for this state. And I'm told that this is, I now realize, this is the golden jubilee of Goa's liberation. But then, from what I've been hearing ever since I've been here, particularly from this morning, well, the message is very clear that the true liberation has yet to come. And I think that is what we need to focus on. I was hearing with rapt attention every speaker, and I thought if I close my eyes and forget that I'm in Goa, then you see, I could be at any place in the country and I would hear the same voice and the same sentiments, which can be seen in two ways. One positive, the other negative. Positive, of course, in a negative sense. There is no discrimination throughout the country so far as egregious violations of human rights is concerned. It is equally rampant all over. You see, which means that it is a matter which is very serious, and if we have been able to achieve national integration, it's only in a negative sense. We need to be positive to tackle all these problems everywhere. I want to share with you some of my thoughts in general without coming to the specifics, which I'll reserve for a little later. As a matter of fact, I told Ms. Sai that, you see, when I came here, that my plan was to hear all of you and then have some question and answers and speak for hardly 5 minutes. But I think I may take a little more time of yours, because, you see, it's necessary that, because I'm an incurable optimist also, that's my problem. So, if the problem is acute, well, I think the need is to be more determined and not to give up. And therefore, to that part, I'll come a little later, how we can do that. And also, you see, not forget the positives. You see, all this is happening is true, everything which has been said. It's only a part of the wrong things which have been happening throughout the country. And Goa, as you rightly said, that well, people may think it's a prosperous place, but all the vices are equally there. But then, you see, in order to motivate us more, inspire us, we need to also recall the positives, because that is going to give us the requisite driving force to do what we need to do. There's no point in simply, you see, it is necessary to know all this to know the magnitude of the task, the areas on which we have to focus. But then, you see, not to be cynical and not to think that, well, nothing has happened and nothing will happen. Well, things have happened. The only thing is we need to have a lot more. And that is where we must concentrate our energy. Now, what's my understanding of human rights? I think that's the first thing. Well, all of us are aware, and some of the speakers very rightly pointed out to the definition of human rights given in the Protection of Human Rights Act. That is, all the fundamental rights and Part 3 of the Constitution, the two covenants of civil and political rights, economic, social and cultural rights, etc., etc. But I think not only in our thinking, but also the interpretation of this expression, so far as we Indians are concerned, is much wider. I won't go into the suggestions which, as chairman of the NHRC, had made long back for amendment of the Act, which of course I haven't heard it go through, although I left the NHRC 8 years back, so there's no follow-up. But I have always believed, and that's been my mission all my life, and that's what I'll commend to you for consideration. Well, always work for what needs to be done by others, but don't leave it at that. See what you can do yourself, even when the others are not prepared to do what they need to do. So, as a judge, and most of the time, and also in the NHRC, I therefore tried to understand things within the area of what I could do without waiting for the law to be amended. So all those suggestions I made for amendment of the Act, with which of course the government as usual is not concerned. But I said, so when I joined NHRC in 1999, within a few days, you see, the media persons naturally were there to know what plans I had, etc., etc. Because on the very first day, on 4th November 1999, when I took over, a week before that was the Orissa super cyclone. So when it happened, I was not in any office, so there was nothing I could do. But as a citizen, I was thinking what needs to be done. So the first thing which I did at 10 o'clock or 10:30 when I joined, I called immediately a full commission's meeting to make an order. And that was, now even my members thought, except for Justice Ramaswamy, who was aware of my antiques because he was my colleague in the court also, others thought, what is this man going to do? I mean, how are we concerned with Orissa cyclone? We could neither stop it nor can we do, and the administration. But I said, no one could stop the cyclone, but then you can certainly stop the further suffering of the victims of the cyclone. And therefore, why is it not a matter for the National Human Rights Commission to take up, you see, for the protection of human rights of the victim? Now, that apart, I mean, you see, the details are not material. The media persons were collected, and after I dealt with all that, well, they started talking to me, and one of them asked me, sir, how would you define human rights? Because I want to start from there. Because if we are very clear about the meaning of human rights, and unless we are very clear, I don't think we can have a complete comprehension. So I told him, of course, although I am supposed to be a lawman, and therefore you would expect me to speak of the definition in the Protection of Human Rights Act, this, that, some convention, but I believe that this is a matter which concerns every human being. So the definition must be a simple definition which even an illiterate person, a common man, as we understand, in our country can understand, can appreciate. And I said, I look at it this way. And these words came to me automatically or spontaneously, and they have stuck in my mind. I said, human dignity is the quintessence of human rights. I said, this is how I define human rights. Human dignity is the quintessence of human rights. Then I said, this will give rise to another question which you may not have thought of. I am posing for myself. What do you mean by dignity? Because you can't substitute one nebulous phrase with another. So you would naturally say, all right, what do you mean by dignity? I said, there is a simple test I have to prescribe, and it is this. You see, without going into the definition, every person, every individual has a very good idea of his own dignity. The trouble is only when I have to think of your dignity that I try to reduce the area. When I try to think of my dignity, I always enlarge it. So, having defined human dignity as the quintessence of human rights, think of every aspect relating to you which you consider to be a facet of your own dignity, and then apply it to every individual. No problem about it. So I have always understood it like this. And I'll just give you one or two examples. Why I'm saying that unless we are very clear about it, it's all right. Environment, this, that, etc. Supreme Court has read it into Article 21, right to life. But don't stop there. I mean, it is something. And so this was one thing. And then I told him, I said, while I was giving you this answer, these replies, or thinking aloud, I said my mind was probably working overtime because there's a sensitive issue. And I said, it's all right, every aspect of human dignity relating to yourself, you say is human rights. But how to understand and appreciate it fully? And then occurred to me another thing which is almost a phrase which I've been using. I said, human rights is a matter of the heart. Human rights is a matter of the heart, and that is the heart of the matter. Now, these three sentences, I think, according to me, you see, fully comprehend the meaning of human rights. You don't need to go to any definition, here, there, etc. Because if we appreciate this, well, the whole, you see, now, sometime later, I want to finish this aspect before I touch the other. Now, a few days later, I happened to go to Bangalore, and as was my practice, I would call all the officers because I thought what is necessary to share the perception, because ultimately, unless there is good governance, and that is, I mean, the theme of your conference, etc., etc., unless there is good governance, there can't be real protection of human rights. And therefore, everyone invested with the exercise of public power must understand what is required to do to ensure good governance, the quality of governance. And there, of course, all of us know of Amartya Sen, that whom, you see, I mean, we call a distinguished Indian, you see, even though he may have left India long, because we recognize people only after they go away. But another distinguished Asian was Mahbubul Haq of Pakistan. You see, who brought many of these things which we have been talking about as the indicia of human development. Now, he coined a phrase, as far as I know, that was, we are all used to talking of good governance. He said, humane governance. He said, good governance must transcend and be elevated to the level of humane governance. And what is humane governance? Humane governance is that which is people-centric and owned by the people. People-centric and owned by the people. And therefore, that's the significance of every one of us, the people, not necessarily those who are in governance, which also correspondingly tells us our obligation, which also we must remember. Our preamble of our constitution starts with the words, we the people of India. That is the source of power, the political sovereignty. So if there are things wrong, don't blame only those whom we have elected and sent to the parliament, assembly, etc., or those who occupy. They are certainly to blame, because they are the persons, as our representatives, required to do what they may not be doing. That's why these. But are we also not failing in our duty? I think we need to focus on that also. Because if we are, you employ as a master someone to serve you. Now that person is not serving you, and you are inert, inactive, being the master. I think you also must share the blame. So I say, so let us not, this is another aspect which I have always wanted to emphasize. Do not always blame those who are failing to perform. If they are continuing to fail to perform, we are also at fault that we are suffering them and not. I am not talking of any violent means of, please don't misunderstand me. I am talking of the failure of the people to discharge their participatory role in governance. And here I'll skip a few other points in between and come directly to one of the last, that was the media's role. The media is the fourth estate. The freedom of press is nowhere mentioned in our constitution. By judicial creativity, freedom of press has been culled out from Article 19(1)(a) of the Constitution, that is the right to freedom of speech and expression of the individual, which has implicit in it the right to know of the people. Otherwise, how will they express? And how will they know? They will know only when the requisite information is supplied to them of all public affairs. Who will do that? The media does that, and the right of the media therefore flows from this. And that is why, even though there are three recognized and established organs of the state, executive, judiciary and the legislature, it has come to be known as the fourth estate. And now, as a matter of fact, for quite some time, we have a fifth estate also in the form of NGOs. So, and they really have become quite powerful. So, you see, therefore, let us be clear that we don't rest content only by pointing out the failures. We need to address what we need to do ourselves. So now, having said about what I understand by human rights and the need for humane governance, that is good governance to transcend to that level, and our role in the scheme of things. You see, I don't think on any subject, but much less on human rights, you can finish what you want to say without reference to Gandhiji. Because he was one person, As yet I have never found any topic on earth on which I have spoken, in which there was not something which Gandhiji had to say. And a few things which I had them written out, which of course I do, here I am be only speaking from memory, but while I was in NHRC I had them on the desktop and had it distributed. Now he said, and his language was so simple, just because that is how he conveyed. He said, it has always been a mystery to me. How can anyone feel, how can anyone feel honored by the humiliation of his fellow men? It has always been a mystery to me. How can anyone feel honored by the humiliation of his fellow men? Now, when the gentleman was speaking about untouchability which is so rampant, well, Gandhiji had provided, you see, in a simple sentence, you see, something long back. Of course, there are a few other things that I'll have to say in that context also. All that I'm keeping for the end. Then, you see, the word justice, I mean, we are associated with the justice delivery system, but it's a much wider word. You see, he had said things which you find reflected in international covenants later. The UN Charter's preamble links world peace with the respect for human rights. You see, the preamble of the UN Charter to save the future generations from the scourge of war, that being the aim, that being the lesson learned from after the Second World War. He said, you see, to respect the human rights of everyone as a member of the one family. You see. Now, in that context, Gandhiji also said, peace does not come out of a clash of arms. Peace does not come out of a clash of arms. It comes out of justice lived and done. So in your actual life, you have to live and do justice. I mean, these are very simple phrases which comprehend the entire canvas. You see. Now, if we bear these facts in mind, and one thing more, we are talking of rights, but we have to remember that rights and duties are correlative. All of us, the students of law, know, we have read it in, you see, in jurisprudence. And the rationale is very obvious. You see, unless I respect your rights, which is my words, comes now or not, of 1947, in a letter to Julian Huxley wrote, I mean something like this, I'm speaking from my recollection. I learned from my illiterate but wise mother. Now mark the words, illiterate but wise mother. So wisdom is not literacy alone, it's much more. I learned from my illiterate but wise mother that for all rights to be deserved and preserved, for all rights to be deserved and preserved, depend on duties well done. You see, all rights to be deserved and preserved depend on duties well done. And then he elaborated it further. We are talking of world is one family. You see, human race is one, much now only. But he linked it with being a citizen of the world. He never spoke of only national citizenship, because he was truly a world citizen. He said he linked it with that. Now, I think these are all things which comprehend the entire human rights jurisprudence. And now one thing more in this context before I move further, and that's what we said in the context of Gujarat 2002. You see, in the order of 1st April and 31st May 2002 that we had made in the NHRC, we said that the, you see, emerging principles of human rights jurisprudence, emerging principles of human rights jurisprudence indicate that the state is responsible for the protection of human rights of every individual within its jurisdiction, and its responsibility is not limited only to the acts and omissions of the state actors, but also to those of the non-state actors. So that, you see, you can't say that no government employee or public functionary committed human rights violation. Your duty is also to prevent the violation, and that prevent the violation being committed by non-state actors also. So that is the wide ambit. It is on this principle that we had held the Gujarat government guilty of inaction, and also indicted the union government for not exercising power under Article 355, which is a prelude to Article 356. You see, we said it is no answer that your officers didn't do it. You see, you failed in ensuring protection of the individuals within the state, which was the task of you as the state, as the protector of human rights. So, every public functionary, the basic status of each one of us, whether we are invested with public power or not, is primarily of a citizen. So, there are fundamental duties of every citizen under Article 51A, which even otherwise are part of our Indian culture and ethos. So, in addition to that, if I hold any public office, then in addition to the duties of a citizen, some more duties are superimposed or added to it. But you can't say that since you are not a public functionary, if you are present at a spot where there is a human rights violation and you are not a public functionary, you can't say it's not my job to, you see, act and prevent. I mean, your job is there even if you are an ordinary citizen. So let us be clear, if these violations are there, every one of us is guilty. And therefore what we have to do is to see how best, you see, we can. And once that is there, then I think things will be much better. Now, how many of us try to discharge our role? We have to ask ourselves honestly. And I think, now I heard, and very rightly that must be a very pressing problem here, this illegal mining. Illegal mining, well, this illegal mining is not something, of course, it's bad here, but this is not the only place. I remember when I was in the court, and I left the court in 1998, long back. It was, I think in 1996 or 97, some lawyers who had gone to Mirzapur district in UP, I mean, they had gone to Banaras, and there they found in Mirzapur district such large scale illegal mining being done that some of those public spirited lawyers, they came and they mentioned it to me in the court. We took up that matter, and we found when we proceeded further that the leader of that mafia indulging in illegal mining, which had completely destroyed that area, was a retired senior IAS officer of the UP cadre, Manavendra Singh, that was his name. So he was the mafia king. I mean, when we issued notice and called the chief secretary and the DGP in the court, I asked him, I said, you say, when did you come to know of it? He said, on getting the notice. I said, none of you deserve to be where you are. I said, if being Chief Secretary and DGP, you come to know from the notice issued by the Supreme Court. so, so I said, I gave them a date 2 days hence. I said, unless you come and report of full action taken by day after tomorrow, I can assure you, neither of you will be in your job. I am not your departmental superior to take action, but I'll take some action which I can take, and you will go from here straight to Tiyar. Now, see, so it was, what I'm saying is, I mean, it's no comfort that if it is happening here, it was happening there also. Now, Sariska in Rajasthan, see, that has ceased to be a game sanctuary. I was in Rajasthan, and one place which I have always been fond of going to see these sanctuaries and wildlife, there used to be so many tigers that you can't find one now. I mean, there's no one there. Now, all this happens in Karnataka. I'm sure Santosh Hegde, when he came, he is very much involved in that. He must have told you all about it, the way he has gone about it. But, you see, is it the job only of a Lok Ayukt or a court alone to do that? And even the court, we could step in because some lawyers whose duty it was not their duty. They had gone for fun to, you see, visit that area. But they were troubled. They came and reported. So are we, each one of us, doing that? I think we need to ask ourselves. Now, I mean, I'll skip a few points and come to something which was very heart-rending, which the gentleman pointed about this untouchability factor. But, you see, let me also tell you something, because I said, I mean, all this we must know so that our public anger must not abate. But we must also see the positives to see that there is some effort on. The only thing is